built to serve.
Back here with Chris Broussard, we're talking Mavericks Clippers, Game 5 tonight. So Dallas comes in with all the momentum after Luka's buzzer beater to even the series. Clippers come in with an ice-cold Paul George shooting 22% from 3 this series. And as a result, Broussard comes in with his newly adjusted pick of Clippers, not in 5, but in 6. Head coach Doc Rivers
borrowed the game the Lakers didn't need.
There you go. Doc Rivers confident PG can get it going. Take a listen.
And just let them keep shooting, you know. Listen, we got to get them more shots, you know, and that's on us. That's on all of us. But I just want him. He got great looks last night, and I just want him to get more of those and take more of those, you know. He needs to shoot 20-plus times. He needs to get the ball up in the air. And he will. He will. I feel very confident about PG because I always have.
Doc Rivers almost seems more confident about Paul George than Paul George seems to be, especially from the way he's been playing. Broussard, any chance you think the Clippers can bounce back if Paul George continues to struggle, continues to play the way he's been playing this series?
Absolutely. Like, they couldn't win a championship with Paul George struggling, but they can beat the Dallas Mavericks. Let's just keep it real. Kristaps Porzingis, the Mavericks' second-best player, has been off the court for a game and a half of this series. Luka Doncic has been banged up the entire series. So even if one of your best players isn't there or is struggling, you have to overcome. Unless Kawhi Leonard and 2 or 3 other Clippers get hurt and can't play, there is no excuse for the Clippers to lose this series, no matter what Paul George does. Now, even if he continues to struggle with his shot, he can still impact the game because he's a versatile player. If he stays aggressive, stays in attack mode, even if he's missing, he can create plays for his teammates. Obviously, he's a great defender, so he can contribute on that end of the floor. This team is not we go as Paul George goes, at least not against the Dallas Mavericks. So certainly they can win this series, even if he continues to miss shots.
But what goes without saying there is they can't win a title with him playing this way. And that does, to me, bring up a very interesting question. Can we throw up Paul George's playoff numbers against the playoff numbers of 2 people yet to be revealed? And I'll tell you, so it's pretty obvious Paul George is the worst person, is playing the worst of these 3 guys. So show who those other 2 guys are, please. Because those are the 2 guys the Clippers traded to get Paul George. Now, that's not all they traded. They also threw in 7 additional draft picks in order to get Paul George. It is an epic haul, and people say, well, you weren't just trading for Paul George. You were trading for Paul George and Kawhi. Got it. But that then brings us back to Kawhi's decision, which was to only go to the Clippers if they make this move. And now, with the benefit of some hindsight, but some of us saw this down the road or further up the road, you got to say Kawhi had 4 options this offseason. The first one was to sign with the Lakers, LeBron, and AD. Now, I'm glad he didn't do it because I didn't want another super team, but that would have been the surest path to a championship. The second one would have been stay in Toronto. You're the defending champs, bringing everyone back. They're awesome even without you. That would have been your second best chance for a championship. But Brandon, what I think America is starting to wonder was your next best chance for a championship, just sign with the Clippers, have them keep SGA and Danilo, have those picks to maybe address rim protection, which is still a massive hole, and never get involved in the Paul George business. That, to me, I think Kawhi might have chosen the worst of his 4 possible options, Brandon, as far as winning a title this year, because playoff P is a real thing. It's just not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kawhi made the right decision. That's where he wanted to be. LA's home for him. He didn't want to play with LeBron. He didn't want to be, you know, LeBron's wingman. And I respect that. But here's the deal. This is on PG-13. This is all on him. Who would have thought that given this moment, this is how he would perform? You don't expect this from a superstar. Yes, I said it, Chris, a superstar. PG needs to step up. It's telling to me that the coach, and you got to take these press conferences serious. We speak in front of the camera every single day, right? And a lot of times we think, oh, we're just answering questions, the players, the coaches, but you really have to listen to what he's saying. Doc Rivers is basically telling Paul George, please shoot. Why do you have to tell a guy to shoot? Like, think about that. That is really telling, and that's really concerning.
You know, I was confused, Brandon, not because Doc Rivers is telling him to shoot. It's like, I don't think the volume of shooting has been the problem. The looks have been okay. This haven't been going in. Broussard, I want to get your take on this specific play. This was my Gladwillian blink moment where I looked at this, and I don't need to analyze it a ton. I don't need to look at his shoulder, and I'm not a doctor. I just very quickly I looked at this in overtime like, that just doesn't look like Paul George. And I'm not, look, I know we're in weird territory, uncomfortable territory to say like, he looks hurt. I'm a doctor. I'm in my basement and doing a sports TV show.
If his shoulder was hurt, if his shoulder was hurt, Doc would not be sitting in his press conference telling him to shoot more. Think about that. He's not hurt. No, Doc knows. Trust me.
I'm not going to put this on an injury. And I'll say this. If I'm in Paul George's position, I want to hear exactly what Doc Rivers said. The last thing you want to do is be out there. You're second-guessing yourself already. And you don't want to be out there feeling like if I miss a few, the coach is going to take me out. Someone else is going to be playing in my place. You want your coach to display this type of confidence and say, shoot, shoot, shoot. I told you guys the other day that I was told they got in a little bit of an argument because Doc was like, stay aggressive and shoot the ball. And Paul George was like, I'm missing. I don't want to shoot if I keep missing. So Doc is trying to put that confidence into Paul George.
That's true.
That's what I want to hear if I'm PG-13.
Listen, Paul George's in his own head, and he's in his own mentions, and it's a problem for him. We know that. He muted his Instagram mentions yesterday. The fact that he needed to do that because he was checking them gives you an idea of how deep in his own head he is, and it's in part because he knows he has had some really tough playoff moments. And he was 2 for 16 in the final game of the 2018 season. And then he came back the very next season. And I know, Broussard, you and I both argued with Brandon yesterday when he called Paul George a superstar. But in Brandon's defense, this dude was 3rd in the MVP voting last year. 3rd in league MVP voting was Paul George a season ago. So his total no-show in this postseason, I understand it's jarring for the Clippers, even if his postseason resume is a little, checkered. But it is, to your point, Broussard, not an excuse to blow a 21-point lead to the Mavs when Luka's hurt, Kristaps ain't playing, and Lou Williams is NBA Jam on fire. Lou Williams scoring a point a minute in that game. Kawhi was excellent down the stretch. And it speaks to, JaMychal Green had a really interesting quote after the game saying they're missing the dogfight that they had in them last year. Any folks that are like, oh, they've lost their heart and soul when Beverly's not out there. If you're a championship team, you can't be missing Patrick Beverly for 3 games and have that derail you. And so there are much bigger issues for the Clippers than just Paul George. But if they're going to win a championship, obviously Paul George has to be better. But right now, they are systemic issues about sustained effort and intensity from start to finish of playoff games.
The identity of this team has changed. Last year, they were the little engine that could. Just taking the Golden State Warriors 6 games in the first round of the playoffs, you saw they played with heart. They played with emotion. They were dogs.
Came back from 31 down.
This year you brought in a superstar and another star, or maybe 2 superstars according to Brandon. Whatever you look at it, 2 stars. And one of them was banged up all the time in Paul George. And Kawhi, Kawhi doesn't practice a lot. Sometimes Kawhi's not at practice, okay? And everything has changed. Now they're not prima donnas, but their identity has changed. And players in that locker room see it, and this is something they've got to fight over. I think they can fight over it. Obviously, I picked them to win it all, but this is something they're going to have to continue to struggle through.
Brandon, quick question to you. When you're a professional athlete, you know you've got, call it the yips, call it whatever it is. Do you want to go out there and push harder and lean into it? Or do you want to take a step back and get your head right and then go out and feel like you're a better chance of making shots?
Maybe it's me and I'm a little off, but when I drop the ball, or if I drop 3 balls in a row, I didn't want a teammate to tell me I can do it or get them next time. I didn't need a coach to say anything to me, because in my head it was like, I know who I am. I know I'm a star. You don't need to tell me that. Throw it to me again. If Jay Cutler stopped throwing me the ball, I walk up to Jay Cutler and say, why are you stopping? Well, you dropped 3 balls. I don't care. Throw it back to me. Sorry, I'm getting a little heated. I guess I'm missing.